What do you get when you mix 1 part philosophy, 1 part politics, and cut it with a healthy shot of history?
You get the perfect podcast cocktail. Thank you for listening.
Now sit back, open your drinks, and open your minds. This is Six Pack Philosophy. Welcome to Six Pack Philosophy with Mike and John. I'm Anastasia, and this week we're going full Grinch and spoiling Christmas. Legit though, we are discussing the history of Christmas, and here a little later in the episode, we are going to discuss some stuff that may be kind of
Christmas secrets.
Yeah, we're going to be spilling some Christmas secrets.
Some Christmas beans?
Yes.
Christmas secrets. Things that are reserved for adults. Reserved for adults.
Yeah.
So if you've got young kids, young ears in the car, you might want to pre-listen to this one first.
Yeah.
We don't want to reveal any adult secrets.
We don't want to ruin your holiday traditions.
That's right.
Exactly. History of Christmas part is probably going to be fine, but once we kind of transition, you may want to find something else. Listen to some fun Christmas music.
Turn Elmo on. It'll drive you batshit crazy.
Well, no. Well, I was going to suggest that they turn on Blue Blue Christmas, which is a channel. You would think they would play that, but they don't.
Really?
At least not from what I listen to.
That's sad.
No, I pulled up a Google station for listening to music. It's like their version of Pandora. And I picked Blue Blue Christmas, and it was incredibly depressing. So, jokingly,
that would be awesome.
I was joking. Don't actually listen to
the
that.
Highest suicide rate of the year is Christmas season. So so we should have Blue Christmas for an album. Yeah.
I would have thought it been Veterans Day.
What?
Anyway, no, it's Christmas.
It's a high suicide day.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
But
people being alone at Christmas.
Yeah.
And
between like Christmas and New Year's.
Aren't you supposed to ask us a question at some point?
Almost about to be sometime, but I think Mike had something to say.
No, I think I was going to jump in for you because you hadn't asked it yet.
So the people watching probably have already noticed that we don't have a beer set up on the table, but for anybody listening, they have no idea. What are we drinking, guys?
We are drinking a homemade eggnog.
Oh, Lord.
And if you want to know how to make this eggnog for your own enjoyment, it's probably a little late now. This is coming out on Christmas, but we released prior to this a video on making the homemade eggnog. And it sounds like we did all right.
It's interesting. It's
Yeah.
It's milkshakey.
It's different than the recipes that we've done before.
Yeah.
So if you watched our how-to video, you'll know that when John and I were making this is a recipe that we had never used before.
Right.
And it's interesting.
Yeah, because
we'll talk more about it later.
Only the best for you. We just try shit out.
Yes.
And
we could do something tried and true.
I'm chasing it with birds. So,
another holiday drink. If you want to know the recipe for that, Mike made a companion video.
Check it out
on how to make.
It's short.
Yes.
But complete. It gives you all the information you need. So, all right. So we are talking a little bit about the history of Christmas, which of course is celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ. Correct?
Among other things.
Yeah, that's
What?
That's the only thing that Christmas is about.
The only thing that Christmas is about is celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ, which didn't happen on December 25th.
Well, no, didn't it happen in like March?
Well, we
area?
don't know. We don't know exactly when, but we figure it's somewhere around March to May. And the reason why is because they tell the story of the shepherds, and that's the birthing season. So it kind of makes sense that it would be then. But we don't really know. So why December 25th? What's the reasoning behind this?
Oh, I remember that one.
All right.
I don't remember what the holiday was, but there
Saturnalia.
Yeah. So there was a pagan holiday.
Well, there's a few pagan holidays.
Yeah.
Right. But when the church was going around trying to convert everybody, this would be the Catholic Church, way back in the day. A
certain Egyptian ruler had come in and he was Christian, thought everybody else should be.
Right.
There were several, yeah.
Yeah. And so
Roman ruler.
They chose to have their big holiday at the same time as this pagan holiday to kind of overlap it and
Sol Invictus.
And bring everybody into the fold together.
Well, and I think when we talk about that, we need to take a step back and ask, why was there a pagan holiday on that day?
Yeah, there's the holiday. The god was called Sol Invictus, or the sun god. Okay,
right.
And Sol Invictus was it was the life-giving sun, and in a
Right.
time period before modern meteorology, before science, the sun was almost like a god. It was
Right.
it was what you recognized as healthy. When it's sunny and bright and wonderful, all nature's alive.
Yeah,
and,
the plants are growing, animals are out.
on those short
all that
days when the
jazz.
sun's not there, the trees lose their leaves and the grass dies
It's darker.
It's very dark. So they look at this, and December 25th is the day on the Gregorian calendar.
Mm-hmm.
On the Gregorian calendar, that is typically the longest day of the year. I say typically because you've got situations where, with leap years and stuff, where things
Right.
change. But December 25th is, I'm sorry, the shortest day of the year.
Shortest, I was
Shortest
about
day
to
of the
say,
year.
I was
yeah.
actually wondering about
shortest
that.
day of the year. Shortest day of the year. It's the winter solstice. It's that day when the sun is up the least. And the reason they celebrate that is because on that day, the sun is being reborn, and every day is going to be longer from that point forward.
Well, and there's a few other reasons. That's kind of the religious background, but there's
Yep.
some really practical reasons. And we see this kind of expressed more in the Northern European traditions, another kind of paganism, but paganism nonetheless. Where
And let me point out, if you grew up in a very conservative Christian church, you probably think paganism means
Like devil
Devil worship.
worshiping,
It doesn't.
or like
All-
dancing naked around a
pagan-
maypole.
it may mean that.
It
might.
could, but pagan is any religion that's not Christian,
Right.
At this point, okay.
Yeah.
So when we say paganism, we're not talking about devil worshippers. We're just talking about a different religion,
Yeah.
probably a nature religion,
And
Yeah.
probably what's the word for multiple gods? There's
polytheism.
a polytheistic religion. But anyway, so whenever you get the shortest day of the year and things are going to get colder before they get warmer, a lot of your
AKA worse before they get better.
well, not necessarily.
Yes.
But a lot of your resources like your cattle, your crops,
They may not make it.
they may not make it. A lot of them have already have already begun reducing. But at this point, this is the real time when you need to start kind of calling your herd to the base. So we start killing off animals.
calves.
Yeah. And we start taking crops that we have stored away that aren't going to make through the winter, and we need to get rid of them because there's a cost associated with keeping them up.
That's right.
So this is kind of where we get the beginning of our idea of a Christmas feast.
Yeah, that's correct. And they you would all gather together, and different parts of the world celebrated it in different ways. In Northern Europe, they would celebrate it with a feast and a Yule log. Where
Yeah.
they would find this large log, this large tree, and they would burn it. And while that was burning, that was supposed to be kind of a good luck thing. It's going to burn to bring luck to us and bring a fertile season to us.
Well, and there's two purposes. You also have to remember this is the shortest day of the year, so things are getting dark.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to see. And a lot of these trees are going to be dying off and rotting anyway, so we're throwing out the herd there. And speaking of dying trees, you may, if you're watching the video on YouTube, you'll see one behind us. It starts kind of another tradition besides the Yuletide log that everybody burns.
Well,
at
the
Christmas.
evergreen.
Yeah.
The idea of the Christmas tree. It wasn't really a Christmas tree at this point. At this point, it was more of, when you looked around, the evergreens were the only thing that didn't lose their leaves during this time period. And it was seen as something special, something selected by God,
Right.
or the gods, and they kind of worshiped fertility by this tree that didn't die.
Yeah.
The idea of the wreath. If you put a wreath on your front door, as we do almost every year at Christmas, we didn't this year, but as we do almost every year. You're really doing a pagan tradition there of bringing fertility to your home.
Right.
It was a fertility rite. A lot of these were. You mentioned earlier the idea of you're not dancing naked around a pole. Well,
Right.
the maypole dancing was a tradition in some of these.
Right.
Can we all kind of agree? I know rock and roll is kind of a more modern term, so probably not at this time period, but Christmas at this time was all about sex, booze, and music. I mean,
Well, it was getting
Isn't
there.
it
It was
now?
getting there. And it's going to get even more that way as it moves on. In this period, while it was a religious festival, it was also very much a celebration of the past year,
Right.
and the glory that you had and the surplus, and asking the gods for a future surplus. Now, when Christianity comes through under the Romans and they conquer, most of Europe. Most of the known world was conquered. If you look at a map of this, the Romans conquered everything around the Mediterranean, down into North Africa, over into Turkey and Asia Minor, all the way up into England and eventually into Scotland. They're going to conquer all this area. And one of the things they're going to do is they're going to try and unite this kingdom with one religion. Constantine is going to be the guy that pushes this. And that one religion, instead of being Sol Invictus, instead of being the sun god, is going to be Christianity.
Yeah, well, and I want to say that it being Christianity was somewhat coincidental to the leadership of the time.
No.
The more important part of this, I think, from a historical perspective, is that religion and government at this time were very closely entwined.
Yes.
And by uniting this huge empire under one religion, you were really uniting them under a strong government. I mean, I know they at the time had one government, but the government was in many ways fractured due to communication limitations and other stuff.
You had an emperor that tentatively owned everything, but the emperor wasn't really controlling it. You had you had minor princes and stuff in places that controlled things. And one of the things the Romans did real well, and one of the reasons I say that America is the new Rome, because we've done it very well, is the idea of, instead of throwing our culture on top of you, we are going to adopt parts of the culture, absorb it, and modify it to meet our needs.
Yeah, they say Americans don't have culture. We have everybody's culture.
In a really weird way that I hadn't thought about before this moment, the MAGA,
Magi,
movement.
Yeah.
No. Make America Great Again.
Oh,
MAGA.
Yeah.
The MAGA movement is very much parallel to the let's unite around a religion movement. It was let's get a common culture because people are going to recognize that and be loyal to it.
I think so. I think you could have said the same thing over. Good Lord, Roman, what did you do?
Terrible mess.
I hope you're watching on the YouTube,
hope you just saw
because
this. She's cut off now. She's had way too much to drink already. I don't know if y'all know this, but she's been sipping on bourbon since like 9 this morning. So
hey, no.
There was bourbon.
Although I did have nice taste of like everything that went into the eggnog.
Hold on. So today you've had bourbon, you've had scotch, you've had eggnog.
Grand Marnier. Hennessy.
She's a lush.
Hennessy.
That's 5 right now that I can think of. So
I would have had wine, but we were rushing out the door.
No, I've got some of that, so we can talk about that later.
Nice.
All right, so I think you're right, and you're looking at a situation where they overlaid this stuff, and it was easier to convert someone to Christianity if you could keep their old customs in place.
Well, and let's talk about trying to convince somebody to have a different view than they hold now. And one of the key ways to do that is to find how their current views align with the view that you are trying to get them to adopt.
Yeah, there's two real objections, that two types of objections that people have to changing culture. And if you can overcome one of them, you're instantly in a better place. Sorry, she just did it again.
Not nearly as bad.
Yes, less. She's getting better. But there's two ways that we find people have objections to a new culture. One is they object to the substance of the matter. They object to I'm going to use the Thin Blue Line and Black Lives Matter movements as two ideas here, but you can apply this broadly. They either object to the substance of the matter, so the idea of more police accountability, talking about the Black Lives Matter, they have an objection to that. And, you're not going to convince them because they don't think it's necessary. They don't think it's a good thing, right? The other type of objection is they have an objection to the verbiage or packaging of the idea.
Yeah.
A really interesting one I saw with Black Lives Matter is they went to the Republican National Convention, or no, it might have been CPAC. Anyway, a very Republican group.
Yeah, they were at CPAC. I remember that.
And they did some quizzes of people, and they asked them line by line, do they agree with these things that the Black Lives Matter movement is pushing?
Without saying that it was Black Lives Matter.
Right. And line by line, they agreed with most of them. But then when you said Black Lives Matter, they were like, no. And with that, it's really kind of a counterculture. And what you see there is them objecting to the packaging around
the label.
Around the idea. And so if you can eliminate one of those two, either make the names line up or make the ideas line up and just transfer the name over, you're halfway to converting your group.
That's right. And the way they did this is they took this old Sol Invictus, the rising sun, on December 25th as the rising up of the sun god, and they just changed sun S-U-N to sun S-O-N, and it's still the rising of the sun. It's the son of God. And it worked well. They were able to lay it over, and you still got to have your drunken debauchery party.
Damn right you
And
did.
guys, for most of history, Christmas has been a drunken and debauchery party. It's not until the Victorian age that changes.
Fucking Victorian age. There was so much that time period fucked up.
I don't want to skip ahead yet, but something we need to hit because I'm so excited to talk about it. We need to bring it back. Is the original idea for Christmas caroling.
Yeah.
But that's going to be the next section we're going to talk about here. You want to talk about this drink before we move on?
Yeah,
Yes.
let's do it. I want to go last on this one because
Okay.
I made it. I've made eggnog before. So I think probably I'm a little bit skewed already. So I want to hear kind of people's...
All right, what's the scale that we're rating this on? Are we going to stay with our five
I
point
think
scale?
so.
So.
Okay.
And, or we could go full meme and rate it on the 10-point scale,
No, because that's going to require some
Okay,
website
fine,
things to
fine.
do.
Yeah.
But let's do
Fine.
5-point scale. And I think it's not fair to rate this against a beer because they're kind of two
No, they're
different
different
worlds.
things. They're different things.
But just try and think of your history of mixed drinks and Christmas drinks.
Yeah.
And, go with that.
I'll tell you, I am not a fan of eggnog. I've never liked eggnog. It's not something that I drink. I just not. I'm not that kind of person. But this is very good. I couldn't drink a lot of it because it's heavy.
Yeah, it is.
And that's okay. You don't need your crazy drunk uncle drinking a whole lot of eggnog at Christmas.
That's
So
true.
Sometimes it's fun, though.
yeah, sometimes it is, and sometimes
Till he starts saying racist things.
or sometimes somebody gets naked, and that's just not something anybody wants to see.
Not
So
at a family event for sure.
you need to come to my family events. I will tell you that this reminds me of a drink that I do love, though. It tastes like a White Russian to me in a lot of ways.
It does, kind of.
And I loved White Russians.
Those are good.
Which is weird because I have a real problem with a lot of dairy stuff. So that's kind
It's
of
like a White Russian with spice.
it is. If anything, John, I think it might be a little too sweet, a little too much like a milkshake, and not enough alcohol-y for me. But I like it. I'm gonna give it a fairly high rating. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go 3.2 on this one.
All right, that's respectable.
Nice. Very nice.
If I was brewing a beer and got a 3.2, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have had, before I met John, I had never actually had homemade eggnog. And I was one of those people who said, I don't like eggnog. It had kind of a tangy taste to it. I'd only ever had store-bought stuff, though. And it was like ridiculously thick and syrupy. And so after I met John, he made his homemade eggnog, not this recipe, but another one. And I really liked it. It was a bit thinner. It wasn't as rich, but it still had a really good flavor to it. And I actually like this one better. I think this one would be good. So if you watched our video on how to make it, you may have seen a little bit of back and forth about how the recipe that he used before calls for whipping the cream to soft peaks.
I was going to mention that, but yeah.
And I actually think that would have done a lot to kind of make this a bit more frothy and light in texture rather than what we have now. It would be a little less milkshake-like. And so if we were going to make this again, I would use the same amount of cream, but I would whip it before we did everything else. And I think that would be the best thing for this. As you guys mentioned before, I have had a little bit, but I think my judgment is still good. I'm going to give this a 3.6. I think it's really good. It is a bit rich, so, as you said, Mike, you can't drink a whole lot of it. But, for most occasions, you don't want to. I think this would be killer to bring to an office Christmas party because I think everybody's going to like it.
Makes a good punch.
Yeah, but they're not going to want to just down it.
Yeah. So I'm going to be a little actually harsher on this eggnog than you two were.
What rank did you give it?
3.6.
Okay.
Yeah. Being someone who's made eggnog annually for the last, 5 years maybe. Well, it had to be longer than that. It's before we got together. So I typically make an eggnog recipe, and it's usually a different one or a slight variation on one I've made before every year. I like this one. So I'll get that out of the gate. I like this. Is good. I was a little skeptical at first. The Grand Marnier.
Yeah.
The Grand Marnier is a liquor, not liquor with orange in it. And I was a little skeptical how the orange is going to come out. I was surprised. That was a pleasant surprise on how it blended in.
I think it kind of cut a little bit of the sweetness.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
And it talked about how you can substitute the Grand Marnier with a vanilla liqueur. I was actually going to do that for cost reasons. We couldn't find vanilla liqueur, so we bit the bullet and did it. I'm glad because I got to try something new, and it worked. It worked really well. I would like to try it sometime with vanilla liqueur just to see the difference, but I like this. A lot of recipes I've had in the past have not put enough liquor in there. Mm-hmm. And this isn't just from a thing of getting drunk. It's from, you want your eggnog to taste like adult eggnog, right? Yeah. You want your kids' eggnog.
You don't want it to be a milkshake.
Exactly. Yeah. And actually, there's an argument that you get more drunk if you don't put enough alcohol in there because people feel safer about it and just drink it.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you're spinning. So I actually like to be able to tell there's alcohol in there. You can with this. I think it's a great level of
good mix.
Alcohol in there.
I would put a little bit more. I want enough that if a kid picks up my glass and tries to drink it, that they kind of take a step back. Like...
Well, and you know, the good thing about this is you can always add more. You can't take it out. So I think this is a great level.
Yeah,
for
I
your
would
batch.
make it like this and adjust to taste if you want a little more.
Spice levels were great. Here's a few places where I'm going to knock it. With the cream, they didn't whip to soft peaks. I would probably we used a pint and a half. I'd probably put the first pint in there, then take the second half pint, whip it to soft peaks, and put it on top as a top layer. It just gives it that extra little pop. I love that. The clove level is really good. It needs some vanilla. Whether you use a vanilla liqueur or whether you use a vanilla bean extract or something, this needs a little vanilla added to it. So I'm going to knock it on that. Also, it's a bit thin for me. I like mine a little bit thicker. Some people here are saying like, that they like the consistency. All that said, I'm not going to give it a bad rating. This is actually a good one in my history of eggnogs. I'm going to give it a 2.8.
2.8.
Yeah.
Okay.
The guy that made it gave it the lowest rating.
Yeah. So I would actually, if I was talking about like ways that I would go about making this differently, I would probably do kind of an extract with I would say probably the bourbon. I would prepare ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
And I would get some nutmeg and some clove, and I would actually soak them in the bourbon that I was going to use beforehand because if you're watching the video, you may have noticed at the beginning that there was like a thick brown stuff at the bottom, and that's where the spices sank down. And so you get a good spice level, and I like it, but I think that if you could distribute it more evenly, it would be a lot better.
Yeah, let me knock it one more time, actually, because I went with a recipe. I did what they said, but I kind of cringed, and you can ask the mistress about this whenever we bought the bourbon. Bullet is not my favorite, and I'm someone who travels Kentucky fairly regularly, and I drink a lot of bourbons. I would not have gotten Bullet bourbon. There's one called it's Angel's Wing.
That one's good. Angel. I don't know.
It's something about angels. That one may be changing soon. It actually got bought by a much bigger company. It was an independent one. Buffalo Trace, all right. The higher Woodfords are. There's some cheap Woodford. But I might have changed out Bullet and got something a little bit smoother. That was good. He spilled it over. Sorry, Mike just got some more eggnog. He spilled it over, but he did it with purpose and did it up on the side of his glass.
And a little bit of style. It was nice.
I've got style.
You do.
Style,
but
I've got class.
But I would have changed out the bourbon. But this again, it's a 2.8.
Well, and my concern with putting a better bourbon in here is that I'd rather have a better bourbon straight. I don't want to use something too good in a mixed drink because you lose so much of what's good about a better version of that type of booze when you cover it up with a bunch of other stuff.
I'll agree and I'll disagree. And touche.
Shocker.
I'm going to agree that if you have a good bourbon and it's something that you don't get often and you maybe can't afford it often or don't have access to it, don't waste your good bourbon. But if it's something you can get and you're trying to make a great drink. And
if you live in Kentucky, you better be using good bourbon.
use a good bourbon.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do it to whatever you can afford and have access to. But I'm just saying, if I'm going to talk about the perfect eggnog, I'm using a better bourbon.
Yeah,
Fine.
I would tend to agree. Let's get back to this this Christmas, and let's talk about Christmas in the Middle Ages.
Fine.
Because it gets a little different then. This is where the idea of the 12 days of Christmas comes from.
Cool.
Starting with Christmas.
One of my favorite songs. Or
Really?
favorite Christmas songs, not favorite all time.
I despise Christmas music. I despise it.
I do too, but like if I'm going to sing a Christmas song, this is one of my favorites.
You want to know my favorite Christmas song? I used to make my mom sing it to me every year. It's called The 12 Days After Christmas. It's a spoof of it, and it's about how all the gifts fell and they return them and they end up breaking up over the whole thing. And
that's kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
My favorite is Robert Earl Keen's "Merry Christmas from the Family." Mom got drunk and Dad got drunk at our Christmas party. That's my family. So
I also like Mele Kaliki Maka.
yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
anyway,
Sorry.
So we have the 12 days of Christmas that go from December 25th to January 5th. And this lines up with Advent, and it's very much a religious holiday, except they got into this idea of gift giving on every day of the 12 days.
Hold on. Advent was a thing before.
We're in the Middle Ages now.
Yeah, it was a thing back then?
Yeah. Advent's been around.
I didn't know about that.
So they took the idea of Saturnalia, where you had this drunken debauchery, and they kind of cleaned it up for religious purposes. And they said, we're going to give a gift for 12 days, and we're going to have feasts every day, but we're going to put a religious aspect on top of it.
they cleaned up some parts.
They cleaned up some parts. Now here's the thing: the church tried to clean it all up. The church
course they
really
did.
tried, but the people weren't willing to.
I understand. I absolutely understand.
Well, and you talk about cleaning up there. I think there's some parts they dirtied up. I mean, can I talk about Christmas caroling? 'Cause I'm excited.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I was researching for this, I knew a little bit about Christmas caroling and how it was, drunken, naked revelry through the street. But here's the part I didn't know. And here's the part we need to bring back. We need to start a Christmas tradition. Christmas caroling was like trick-or-treating for adults. They would come to your door, they would sing songs, and then they would ask every door they went to for a drink of their holiday punch, which might have been some eggnog, might have been something else, but it was an alcoholic beverage.
They called this the holiday of misrule.
Yes, and they would go through and get drunk, and then this tradition starts, making more of a trick-or-treat scene. Whenever it started becoming tradition that they would say, we need a drink of your holiday punch or we're going to throw rocks through your windows. So
Oh my goodness.
It kind of became a threat.
It's a little excessive.
Yeah, they would actually take a peasant and they would crown him the king of misrule, and this person was like the king of these people for the day. And he would stand, my first order is that the laws are all gone now, and the people would just run in anarchy. It was chaos. However,
it's not about no rulers; it's about no rules.
Yeah. It's a bizarre situation.
We could do this in like that area of DFW that has like a lot of breweries really close together, and do kind of like a beer mile type thing.
Oh, and if we got them in on it and they could give us...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We could do that.
That would be
anyway.
fantastic.
It starts
Too late this year.
It starts to clean itself up a little later on there. In the Renaissance and the Reformation, it cleans up a little bit.
Yeah.
However, the version of Christmas that we are most familiar with is the American Christmas. And most of your Christmas historians will say that modern Christmas is an American invention.
Yeah.
It's something that came out of the Mad Men of Madison Avenue in New York City.
Largely out of Moore's poem.
Yeah. But, I found it interesting that when the Puritans came over, they were so disgusted by the behavior of the peasants in England during Christmas, they outlawed Christmas. Christmas was illegal in this country, and it stayed illegal for a long time.
Like I was
in fact, it looked like Christmas was never going to be a big deal here in America until the new immigration pattern shifted in the 19th century. In the 1800s, Victorian era, you had all these Germans start coming to America, and they brought with them their Christmas traditions of Christmas trees and Yuletide. And then it all changed when Queen Victoria sent a picture out of her with her husband and her kids in front of a Christmas tree, and suddenly it became fashionable. Now, I knew that part
Wasn't she also the one that made wedding dresses, white wedding dresses, a thing?
I don't know.
I think it was her.
I knew that part of the
She was
story.
very influential. I mean,
Forgive me,
obviously,
guys.
she was a fucking queen.
I've got a cough here, and I keep gagging, choking up on this.
A little bit of a holiday weather.
Yeah. In America, though, they took those pictures and they altered them and they took the crown, the tiara, off of Queen Victoria in order to make it look more generic. And a lot of Americans thought that was a picture of two Americans in front of a tree. They didn't realize it was Queen Victoria and Edward.
That's funny. Like old school Photoshop?
Well, yeah, that painting. A lot of that stuff
Right.
is hand painted. So you start seeing that kind of stuff and you realize that things were changing.
All right. So anyway, sorry, Mike is
dying.
Yes, he is dying in front of us. Merry Christmas, everyone.
I'm trying here.
Yeah. No, and we appreciate you sticking with us.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that painting, along with a poem by Moore, I forget his first name.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Which,
Probably William.
Which ended up being "'Twas the Night Before Christmas."
Yeah.
that
So
one.
it wasn't known by that title at the time, but it later gets that. And I want to say, for anybody who's ever stumbled around their words and said like "Happy Christmas," I mean "Merry Christmas," right? In that poem, that's where that phrase came from, "Merry Christmas." It was originally written "Happy Christmas" and got changed at the last minute. So you're not alone. Moore
It
himself
was actually
struggled with
changed
this.
by Montgomery Ward. That was actually written as a commission piece for Montgomery Ward.
I'd forgotten
And the
about
retailers changed it. By the way, Montgomery Ward is also the people that commissioned Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yeah.
So you start seeing all this stuff, and you realize that there's a lot of commercialism in this.
Damn right there is.
I want to talk a little bit about Santa Claus. The image that we have of Santa Claus, in the red felt suit with the white fur and the little red nose and
With the
stocking
demon
cap.
following behind.
What?
With Krampus? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
But this image is not the original image of Santa Claus.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't know
Which
if y'all,
one of these is? There are like 82.
Naked Santa.
the green one down there by your. There you go. If you want to pull that out. Father Christmas was probably the original version, and Father Christmas was he was seen as a kind of a jovial elf.
Yeah.
And almost always shown in green.
With no body.
Yeah, but you can kind of see something.
Yes.
The other thing you'll notice about Santa Claus is largely we talk about borrowing from religions. If you'll notice that, anybody ever seen a picture of Zeus or Odin or God?
Oh, I didn't know
They
that.
borrowed that concept whenever they came up with this. So you've
Holy
got this
crap.
guy of a spiritual
Zeus, but happy.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, I've heard a few things. Now, yes, he was originally an elf, but I heard when the Americans adapted it that it had to do with fashion of the time, and they were kind of structuring modern Santa after Grandpa and the stylings
Yeah.
of Grandpas at the time, because Grandpa gave all the gifts,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But there really was a Saint Nicholas. Saint
Yes,
Nicholas was
yes.
a bishop in Turkey. It wouldn't have been called Turkey then; it was part of the Roman Empire.
Right.
But it's modern Turkey. And
Istanbul? Constantinople.
it's Istanbul today.
That song is going to be in my head.
I tell you, if Cosmo's listening now, if you got those two around, she's going to hunt you down. That little Greek princess
That's
will
going
get
to
you.
be in my head all day.
So this guy, this Saint Nicholas, was a bishop, and he would. It got around that if you put your shoes outside, that he would leave gifts for you. And originally it was for the home, for the very, very poor.
Right.
And it wasn't a Christmas thing; it was all year round. They just
Yeah.
let your shoes out. But eventually, it becomes such a big deal.
Yeah, well, we kind of adopted as a Christmas tradition later.
Yeah, we did. We adopted the idea of the stockings.
And even some places in Central and South America now, they still hold to the old tradition of leaving your shoes out at night for Christmas gifts. It's very akin to our leave your tooth under your pillow for the tooth fairy kind of thing.
But when Saint Nicholas came over with the settlers, particularly the Dutch that settled around New York, they brought Saint Nicholas with him. But you got this situation where the Dutch spoke a Germanic language, and it was a little different. English is Germanic as well, so they're close, but they're not the same.
They're still considered under the Latin Romantic languages, but they branched early.
Well, no,
from each other.
they're actually not Romantic. They're Germanic. They're Germanic, which comes out at a little different side.
So English, the English romantic language,
No,
right?
English is not a romantic language. English is a Germanic.
No, there's Proto-Germanic, I think,
Proto.
that the Romantic languages and the Germanic languages
They broke
sprung
off,
from.
yeah.
Okay.
They all come off Indo-European.
Yeah.
But you've got this situation where it came here, and through the rushing of talking, Saint Nicholas, people would hear this, and Saint Nicholas became Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And you can hear it if you it's hard. It was hard for me to hear. I kept going, how do you get Santa Claus from Saint Nicholas? But if you can feel it in your mouth when you say it, you can feel where when you rush, it happens very easily.
Yeah.
Well, and we need to remember that, why is mom or mama, because it's the first sounds that a baby makes, right?
Yeah, it's easier to pop than it is anything else.
So a lot of these words, they weren't made by adults. They were made by children. Saint Nicholas, and they're
If
running
you
around.
stick cotton in your cheeks and you say Saint Nicholas,
There you go.
like Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And these little children have fat little cheeks, and they were saying it.
They do. It's so cute. If you have a baby and you just stick your fingers in their mouths and you squeeze their cheeks, they're like 3 inches thick. It's adorable.
So this guy, this Santa Claus, this American invention, it still starts off as this jolly little elf. Eventually, he's going to be raised to a full-grown man, and elves are going to become his assistants,
Slaves.
his slaves.
Slavs. I think the word is Slavs.
No, it's not.
Okay.
You want to put the warning out there again right now? I know we've already kind of gone through
Hey
this,
guys,
but
we are about to have some serious Christmas spoilers. So if you have young kids in the room, you may want to send them away or put in your earbuds or something like that. If you have older kids, I'll leave it up to you.
Hey kids, if you're hiding behind the couch, I'm gonna tell you, if you learn these secrets, there's no more presents.
That's right. No more presents.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
grandmother told me that when I was young. When you stop believing in Santa Claus, presents stop coming. My grandma's still alive, and damn it, I still believe.
Absolutely.
All right.
Don't we all?
So we've got Saint Nicholas, which has become Santa Claus, and that's the Dutch coming in. Well, then the Germans come in, and they brought the idea of Father Christmas with them. Father Christmas was another offshoot of this, but Father Christmas was the drunken, fun version of Christmas. It was, he's the guy that came and brought your parties. He was bigger. He was a bearded man, and he brought with him all these ideas, and the Germans liked that side. Well,
Damn right.
The Germans and the Dutch end up mixing there, and you got these two guys. They're at the same time. One is Father Christmas. One is Santa Claus. They're both bearded men, and eventually they get merged into the American idea of what we have as Santa Claus.
In true American tradition.
That's right. And we ended up going through and coming up with this new idea. But Santa Claus still didn't have a standard appearance. In fact, most of the time, all of your Father Christmas, Santa Claus, Santa Claus, all of these were almost always shown in green, very much a foresty outfit. Does anybody know why they wear red and white now?
Well,
Coca-Cola.
You're right.
I was about to say, it's too bad there's not some corporation around sugary holiday beverages that couldn't standardize this for us.
Norman Rockwell was commissioned by the Coca-Cola Company to come up with an ad campaign, and he chose to do the ad campaign over Santa Claus, and he wrapped Santa in Coca-Cola's colors of red and white. Now,
Will I get hung if I say that I'm not really a fan of Norman Rockwell?
I love Norman Rockwell.
Okay.
I think it's pretty incredible stuff.
The answer is yes. Yes, you will.
I think so.
But
That's why I don't say it.
you'll get hanged, not hung.
Hung is
How do you know I'm not hung?
But to get hung is something totally different.
what happens when you try natural male enhancement.
So you start realizing that this image that we have of Santa Claus comes from Moore's "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," where he gave us the 8 reindeer. Later on, from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Montgomery Ward, where Rudolph becomes there, where the red and white of Santa Claus comes out of Coca-Cola. We are a commercial Christmas, without a doubt.
And it's funny, you talk about the development of Santa. I'm doing this from memory, so somebody correct me if I'm wrong here, but if I'm thinking through it, Moore very much developed his physical characteristics, his face, his shape, his body, and then Coca-Cola developed his attire. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. They're borrowing from each other.
Yeah.
Now, there's a guy named Thomas Nast who also kind of came up with these ideas. He was an editorial cartoonist. You've all seen Thomas Nast's cartoons a million times in your life, whether you know it or not. He's the guy that created the donkey and the elephant as the symbol for the Republican and the Democrat Party. You know, he's a famous guy. But he was the first to give Santa Claus the fur around the edges and all that. So he kind of gave it that look, but it was black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you got Thomas Nast giving it this fur area and the felt. You've got
it's very Canadian vibe.
Yeah, and well, New York,
Alaskan.
It's all New York. So that's right there. New York.
I was trying to find a cold place.
New York is South Canada. I mean, let's be honest.
I like that.
Yeah, it's
Fuck South Canada.
With a lot less apologies.
It's right below our attic, right?
South, as in worse.
Yeah.
Hey, the South is not
Bye,
worse.
New York.
The South is not worse. Okay.
Bye, South.
Yeah. You've just screwed us.
Sorry, guys.
You can't
Merry
drink
Christmas.
this much. So now that I've done all this, I get to thinking to myself, every year at Christmas, I get with my family, and we get together, and somebody always comes up with, we need to get back to what Christmas is really about. It's all now. Christmas is all about merchandising and all this stuff. And now that I've done all this, I want to go, shut up, bitch. It's always been about merchandising.
Yeah.
It's always been about merchandising.
But I disagree with that.
What? Yeah, let's get back to it. Everybody get naked. We're going to run around outside drunk as fuck.
Why do we have to wait till Christmas?
I'm in now.
Or that.
I'm in now.
But
I've had enough of this. I'm good.
I disagree with that. I think that commercial entities will always capitalize on the trends of the time. But here's what I think it's about. I think the nostalgia around getting back to what Christmas was, and I think It's a Beautiful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Sorry, it's a Wonderful Life.
One of my favorite movies.
Yeah, did a great job of illustrating that Christmas is not always the happy time you think it is, and whether or not it's a happy time has a lot to do with you and not the holidays, not how much money you have, not what's going on, but how you choose to view things.
When did we become a Hallmark after-school special?
But
This show?
Yeah.
Oh.
well, but what I think that Christmas is about, has always been about, is about remembering the ways that you felt as a child during the holiday times, how it made you feel. Now, you always thought your parents had it better, but that's because they were remembering the way they felt in a nostalgic manner. They were enhancing the memory, right?
We always remember the past as better than it was.
And then trying to take that feeling and pass it on to your kids. It doesn't matter if a new tradition's made every generation. It's about remembering the tradition, the family, and that link that we have through the ages to the people that brought us here. Whether Coca-Cola made the colors red and white or Pepsi had decided on blue and red, it doesn't matter. What matters is that connection to our past and taking some time out of the year every year. And we only need to do it once a year because I can't afford to do it more than that. But taking the time to remember our family, our history, and how we got here. I think that's the important part.
And I think we should go sing loud, raucous carols in front of our
Yes,
neighbors
that's
and
where
demand
we
that they
came
give us
from.
alcohol.
That is our history.
Hey, are we going caroling this year?
Yes, as long as we sing the one about Mama making out with Santa and rape.
That's all of them.
Is it?
Which one is it about mom making out with Santa or rape?
Rudolph. That one's about bullying.
That one is
Yes, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
I don't know. There are other ones.
Some of them were about an old bearded man breaking into people's houses.
I think that's all of them. Every last one of them. Does it count if you prepare for him to be there? Is it still breaking in? Because I think
That's called open carry.
I'm just saying he's not opening the door. He's coming down the fucking chimney.
that is true. What if you don't have a chimney though? If you don't have a chimney,
That traumatized me as a kid.
Yeah. If you don't have a chimney, your cat lets them in. If you don't have a cat, someone else's cat gets into your house and lets them in.
We've still got it. We had this little sterling silver key that my mother would put on the doorknob. It had a little ribbon on it, hang on the doorknob. And it was so Santa could get
Santa's
in
key?
if he needed to. It was a magic key.
That's
Santa could get in.
adorable.
Because we didn't have a fireplace.
That is adorable.
Okay. It seems like you have a story. I know Anna has a story. Do we want to do a hard shot? This one will be kid friendly.
Yeah. Oh.
On how Santa gets into the
Mine's
house.
not.
Yours not. Yours
No.
isn't.
No.
Yeah, but it talks about the cats and they worked with Santa Claus.
I can make it kid friendly.
Okay, we'll tell kid friendly stories. I don't actually have one because my parents never did the Santa Claus thing. Kid friendly stories on how
You were abused as a child.
Well, they had whole things about.
He's
lying.
abused as an adult. Who are we kidding?
Right.
We probably want to talk about that though before we get off here. The philosophy of
you got to do this.
Yeah.
You've been talking about the morality of Christmas. I don't know what you're talking about.
Is
I need more
Christmas
eggnog
moral?
for this.
Yeah.
Here, eggnog me up.
So here's
need
the
more
deal.
bourbon.
Hopefully all the kids are gone by now, because this is the part that I was most concerned about having kids around to listen to. So send them away now, please. And if you don't, it's your fault at this point. So my deal is, there is a lot of discussion, and I've noticed it primarily in my own generation as we've become parents. And I don't know if it was discussed as much in previous generations. I'm not speaking to that at all. What I am speaking to is that I'm seeing it in my own generation a lot. And this discussion that's being had about, should we do the Santa thing? Should we tell our kids that Santa is real? Should we bring presents from Santa? Should we use Santa as a means of getting our children to behave appropriately?
Is it immoral
Yeah.
to use Santa to encourage behavior?
What are the ethics of Santa Claus? And I think there are a few aspects that we need to tackle. One of them being telling your kids that Santa is real. Is that unethical? The other one being, and I think this one's actually more clear cut, is it moral to use the expected reward from Santa as a means to adjust your children's behavior? Because the first one of whether or not you even pretend act like Santa is real or not is more, I think, about lying to your kids generally. Whereas I think saying things like, look, if you don't straighten up your attitude, Santa's not going to give you any presents. You're going to be on the naughty list, is a lot more about behavior manipulation. And so I do think those are actually two different questions that I'd like to address.
Well, to me, it's not clear unless you take this hard deontological line and then take the hard deontological line and draw this arbitrary line in truth and say truth is one of my principles for reasons that I can't explain, and say I must always tell the truth on everything. It's not actually clear to me that lying is an immoral behavior. Now, we can talk about instances of lying to people you're on a team with, or lying to people for a gain, and say that's good or bad. But generally, lying, for instance, I'll give you another example. If we want to talk about just lying as a good or evil, you find yourself in a war zone, army's advancing, and there's a decent chance you're all going to die. You need to keep everyone moving. You need to move up the hill. If you can cross this border, you might be all right. There's a scene that's played out multiple times in history. The kids hear shots. They maybe hear people screaming. They say, are we going to die? And you know that's going to kind of tear them down, and they may not be able to keep going. You say, we're going to be fine. You just keep moving. You've lied to them. You lied to them for a reason of keeping them safe or making their lives better, maybe for the short time that's going to be, but you lied to them.
I'm just saying, the thing that I would say is not if you keep fucking moving and hope that motivates their asses instead of freezing them.
Possible. I mean, but your kids. Some might.
True.
You may be in a weird situation where if two kids, where if you tell one they're going to be fine, they're going to sit their ass down, and you tell the other one that they're about to die, they're going to sit down and cry, and you got to make a decision.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
I think you have to do the mental calculus and decide what the right thing to do is in that time period. I mean, if you're if you come across a car wreck and somebody's dying, you're going to say, well, you're dying, buddy. Or you're going to make it. You're going to make it. It's okay. You're going to keep the strength up.
I've actually seen some really interesting research on that, but that's another show.
Yeah, it is.
And I think the same thing is true here. I'm not going to make a judgment on whether or not you should. I don't think there's a yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a yes. You should teach your kids about Santa Claus, or no, you shouldn't teach them about it. I think it comes down to what's important to you and your family.
I think a lot of it deals with intent and outcome. I think those two are really important, right? So if you lie to your kids because you spite them and you tell them that the best way to invest in retirement is winning the lottery, and they happen to win, right? then you have
you were a great parent.
Yeah, you have
in that case, you were a great parent.
You have this intent question where you had horrible intentions, but it worked out really well. On the other hand, if you tell your kids that same kind of scenario, you love them, you want them to do best, and the best thing to do is to invest wisely and diversify, and then right before they go to retire, it's 2008 and everything crashes, and they'd have been better off with lottery tickets. I mean, you had a really good intention and a really bad outcome. So I think intent and outcome and how those two balance is really important to the question.
Well, and one of the dilemmas that a lot of parents express with this is when my kid finds out that Santa isn't real, I don't want them to feel betrayed because I lied to them for so many years. And I think there's a key element here. And I think it is being the person to tell your kid that Santa's not real. Well, I think it is sitting them down and saying, look, you are 8 years old at this point, and I think you need to know that Santa is not real. We have been playing a game with you, and I hope that you've had a lot of fun, but this has all been a game.
You're crushing me right now.
And the thing about it is because I think, and tell me this, whenever you've been lied to, is it worse to hear from the person who lied to you, hey, I lied to you, I shouldn't have done it, or whatever?
If you're not watching
you guys
YouTube,
are on YouTube right now.
And I don't know if you can see it on the video, I'm looking here. Mike has just left the room. He came back with a hat that says, I believe in Santa Claus.
I do.
I know you do.
I do.
And
my grandmother may be watching, so.
And I hope that you don't believe a word that I'm saying.
I don't. You're full of crap.
But anyway, I think that if you look at a situation in which you were lied to, and the person either came to you and said, hey, I lied to you about such and such, and they came clean themselves, versus when you heard it through the grapevine, which was worse? And I think most people would say hearing it from somebody else is worse.
Well, I think this idea of not lying to your kids actually comes from a very selfish place. I think there are good surface intentions, but I think it comes from the same selfish place where, and I've seen this before, and it always blows my mind. Young teen girls say, I want to have a baby because it'll love me unconditionally, right? I can tell you at least...
No, it won't.
I can tell you at least the argument that was made from my parents. And I was growing up in one of those households that said, we're not going to do that. And their argument was actually interesting. They said, I'm telling him in relation to Christmas about Jesus and Santa Claus. And if I've been lying to him about this, where is he going to come to question Jesus? Yeah. So they never lied to me, and I became agnostic. So, interesting thing
that
there.
worked out real well.
Yeah, but I think it comes from the same selfish place of, I need my children to be able to trust whatever I say. And that may be really important when they're really young and can't take care of themselves. But on a long-term scale, I think that's selfish. Honestly, even if you intend to be honest about everything you say, sometimes you're just wrong. And I don't think it's healthy for kids to trust everything their parents say. They need to question that. And
question everything.
Yeah. And when you come to this place of, I want my kid to question the world except for the things I say, I think you're kind of trying to hold yourself outside of that on a godlike level in a very selfish way.
And I think that some people may be executing in that way, but I think there's actually a critical difference because there's a balance that you have to strike as a parent between giving your child a realistic view of what it's like to exist in the world and giving them a sense of trust, because it is essential to be able to trust people, period. You have to trust that other drivers on the road are going to do the things that they need to do. You have to trust that any number of other things. I'm not even going to try to list them all, but you have to have trust in the world. And I think that as parents, you exaggerate that to a certain degree because they have to have something that they can rely on.
I agree with you, but I think you have to have trust in the way the world works, not in what people say. For instance, somebody can tell you something and you can look at the world and say, yeah, that generally applies to the way the world works. So I'm going to give it an extra point of trust in my mind that I both heard it from someone and the world works that way. But to say that you have to have trust does not, I think, imply that means you have to have trust in the things people say. And that's, I think, the trust that's trying to be developed when you don't play these fun games, whether it's talking about at a later age that, Santa Claus thing, or even at a very young age, this whole idea of playing with their idea of object permanence and playing peekaboo. I mean, it's kind of the same thing, I disappeared, I didn't disappear, but you didn't. You were there.
Right,
right.
Wait, my mother didn't disappear?
No.
Your mother disappeared, but that was for a different reason. That was a different thing.
Oh my goodness, that got dark.
I'm sorry, Mom.
Yeah.
Come back.
Yeah. But anyway, so I don't think that we're going to answer the question of whether or not you should do Santa with your kids.
No, you got to answer it.
I have to answer it. Okay. I actually think that now other parts of my family did Santa differently with my son. I liked what we did. We talked about Santa. I kind of talked to him about how Santa had developed and St. Nicholas and all this other stuff. I never used Santa as a means of behavior modification, but I think that was actually because my kid was weirdly easy. He behaved well most of the time, and so maybe with more difficult kids, it's a lot more rewarding to say, look, if you don't act right, Santa's not going to give you any presents.
Hey, it works.
I'm sure it does. That's why people do it. And so maybe with more difficult kids that they're doing that has some more pull. I never found a need to do that. But I also I don't recall ever explicitly telling him that Santa was real. And always just kind of left it up to him. If he would ask if Santa was real, if he would ask if Santa was coming, I'd kind of put it back on him of, well,
what
do you think Santa's real? Do you think Santa's coming? Do you think you've been a good boy? Whatever it was.
You need to question it.
Yeah, absolutely. And
that's a valuable lesson for a kid to learn.
Yeah, and I think that is a really healthy take on critical thinking that you can use the whole Santa narrative to foster. You can use it to say, well, you found half chewed up carrots on the front porch and you heard clip-clopping in the middle of the night. But, you've never actually seen a reindeer fly, and we don't have a chimney. And the handwriting on the tags from the Santa presents are the same as the handwriting from the parent presents.
You're not very good at that, then.
Well, yeah.
But I totally ate those cookies. That's me.
Yeah. I have, M&Ms stuck in my teeth from the M&M cookies that you left out for Santa. So, if you look at those facts and tell me if you think Santa's real.
I do.
I do. I know you do.
I do. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I think we have beat this one down, though, haven't we?
I think we have, and I think it's been fun. I think
so, and it's been a lot of fun. Hey, is this our last regular
one
show?
For year 3.
Yep.
Last regular show for season 3.
Changes for season 4. I mean, it's going to be the same show, but there's
going to be so pretty, though.
There's going to be some differences. So this is the last kind of in the old
format. Mode.
Yeah.
So things are going to be different from here on out. Better. It's going to be better.
Much better.
I keep beating the hell out of this microphone.
As long as Mike stops hitting his microphone.
Oh, shut the hell up. All right. So, hey, if they want to support the show, what can they do?
If you want to support the show, there's a plethora of ways you can do it.
Do you know what the word myriad actually stands for? 10,000. Which is why you don't say a myriad, because you don't say a 10,000.
Yeah.
But I say a plethora. Anyway,
Whatever.
There's a plethora of ways you can do it. First thing, real easy. Look down. If you're driving, don't look down. Do it later. Click the like, click the subscribe.
I see my penis.
Yeah.
I saw my boobs.
Oh.
If you saw your penis, we were going to be trying. But yeah, click the like button if you like this show. Click the subscribe button if you want to hear more.
I saw her penis once.
I was hung earlier.
Yeah. If you want to see us and you can't see us right now, you're just listening, go subscribe to our YouTube. We also not only have this video, this audio in video format, but we also have some other videos like our eggnog video or our other holiday beverage.
Holiday beverage spectacular.
Go check us out on
Spectacular.
Yeah,
it was good.
It was wonderful.
Yeah. So
I don't know. I haven't seen it. I'm just going with it was wonderful.
We haven't edited it, so it's not a thing.
I had the product, so.
But go and check it out on YouTube. Also, if you want to see us grow, if you like what we're doing, you like independent philosophy discussion and history discussion and political discussion and whatever you get from us that you enjoy and you want to see that grow, you want to see it sound better, you want to see it look better, and you want to see us do it more often, go to patreon.com/sixpackphilosophy and you can support us directly and get some listener perks.
Yeah, please come out and help us out here.
I promise you, if we can ever make this thing big enough that we don't have to work, we'll do this full time. We'll release like 3 a week or something.
Do
whatever
it all the time.
Whatever's feasible.
We'll just drink beer and record podcasts all the time.
Till our livers give out.
Honestly, the beer drinking will get the oldest. I mean, we've been doing this for 3 years now, and I get to the point now when we're not recording of like,
do I really want a beer?
I don't want a beer. I'm going to have one on Sunday.
Yeah.
But yeah, so go to patreon.com, check it out. We have levels all the way down to $1 a month. I mean, if you can afford $1 a month, I think the biggest barrier to people going over is the time it takes. And, all I can say there is take a little time and help us out.
And we
It doesn't
appreciate
take
it.
very long. It doesn't take very long at all.
If you've enjoyed the time we've put into the show and want to hear more, take a little time and help us out. We'd appreciate it.
Yep.
We'll buy Mike some cough medicine.
No, I appreciate that too.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big investment.
My apologies for the way I sound this week, but
I
at
was
least
that
I'm
way
here.
last time, so we do it. It happens. Partially because we haven't missed an episode in 3 years.
Not miss a single episode.
We can
If we'd
feel
stop
like
making
shit,
out with each other, we wouldn't pass this back and forth.
We can sound like shit. We can look like shit, and we're still here.
By the way, next week we're not missing an episode. There will not be anything coming out on the way it has in the past. There will
Because
be
New Year's is on Monday.
Yeah.
And we already release our New Year's episodes on that day. So we're trying not to bombard you with a whole bunch of stuff.
We don't want to give you 3 podcasts in one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to be live streaming the New Year's show that night, New Year's Eve night.
Right.
If you have other New Year's Eve plans and you can't make it, we understand. So
You can still find it later.
but in the audio will be released
Yeah.
New Year's morning, and you can check it
time.
out then. But we won't have I'm going to say podcast air quotes regular show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with that, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Here at Six Pack Philosophy, we want to wish you Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, whatever it is that you're celebrating. And if you're not
Hanukkah, what else is
celebrating
there?
anything,
Kwanzaa.
we hope that whatever you're doing is fantastic. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
See y'all at the New Year's show. Ooh, I'm sorry.
Can we do it in front of the mic? That's usually where we do it. There we go. There, that's better.
Don't break the crystal.
Okay, I'm trying not to.
All right.
I'm just trying to get a good ding.
Cheers.
Six Pack Philosophy can be used to treat closed-mindedness, straight ticket voting, and faulty reasoning. Side effects of Six Pack Philosophy may include questioning the status quo, thinking for oneself, and erectile dysfunction. Ask your bartender if Six Pack Philosophy is right for you. And as always, keep on drinking and thinking. This has been Six Pack Philosophy.